Good evening. Tonight, I can report to the American people and to the world that the United States has conducted an operation that killed Osama bin Laden, the leader of al-Qaeda.
On a raid in Abbottabad, Pakistan, a team of US SEALs killed the world's most wanted terrorist. Next, the elite special operators scoured the property for intelligence. They recovered documents revealing the critical timing of the raid.
We now know from the documents recovered in the compound that bin Laden was planning to leave. So President Obama's decision to make the call to do the raid turned out to be a very good decision.
There were 5 computers, 10 hard drives, 110 thumb drives, and a handwritten journal.
Osama bin Laden is one of the few people you can say changed history.
Notes in Osama bin Laden's journal and a collection of letters are seized in the raid that killed him. They detail his thoughts, inspiration, plans, and desires to win a holy war by outlasting his enemies. I'm Peter Bergen. As a journalist and historian, I've dedicated 2.5 decades to reporting on Osama bin Laden. That's why in 2011 I came here with National Geographic to investigate the rise and fall of the world's most notorious terrorist. His story began in Saudi Arabia in 1957. Born into wealth, little in his privileged upbringing suggests he'll become a firebrand of Islamist jihad. At age 27, he joined up with the Afghan Mujahideen to fight the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan. Bin Laden considered it a holy war, a struggle to repel an infidel force. By war's end, he has cultivated the image of a fearsome military commander. The relationships he forges, particularly with his physician, Egyptian militant Ayman al-Zawahiri, would eventually found al-Qaeda, the base. Finding victory against Soviet invaders, al-Qaeda turned its focus to jihad, holy war. Eventually, the reach of their terrorism extended to Western countries.
Given enough time, they can plan, they can recruit Westerners. They may not be able to attack the United States itself, but maybe an attack in Europe, maybe an attack on an American target in the region. All that is very plausible.
At the start of the 1990s, Saddam Hussein invaded Kuwait, a small country nestled between Iraq and bin Laden's homeland, prompting an overwhelming international and especially American response.
The United States strongly condemns the Iraqi military invasion of Kuwait. And we call for the immediate and unconditional withdrawal of all the Iraqi forces.
The Bush administration coordinated an international response to mobilize a coalition of forces to expel the Iraqis. Members of the American military staged for war. Boots on the ground in bin Laden's homeland, and the location of the 2 holiest sites in Islam.
When the United States chose to put 500,000 troops in Saudi Arabia after Saddam Hussein had invaded Kuwait in 1990, that's another moment where, bin Laden really began to conceive of his mission as an anti-American mission.
Their first strike against American soil is a bold one.
At noontime today in New York City, there was an enormous explosion in a parking garage beneath the World Trade Center. There are fatalities and hundreds of injuries.
February 26, 1993, a group of terrorists attacked the World Trade Center. They wanted to bring down both towers. They blew up a van in the basement of the Trade Center. They killed 6 people.
Until moments ago, people were still being rescued from atop the Twin Towers. Helicopters were also flying large numbers of police officers onto the rooftops. The policemen and women are working their way down the upper 50 floors, going door to door, office to office, bathroom to bathroom, elevator to elevator, while fire department personnel and Port Authority rescuers are working their way up 50 floors, and they'll meet somewhere in the middle.
The terrorists had something in common, which is they'd all been to Afghanistan or they were helping the Afghan war effort.
The US State Department called the bombing the first indication that terrorism was evolving from a regional phenomenon outside of the United States to a transnational phenomenon. And bin Laden was the face of that terror. Bin Laden now has the attention of the US government. Nations that formerly housed the terrorist are pressured by the US to turn their backs on him. He is expelled from Saudi Arabia and Sudan. Bin Laden and Al-Qaeda now need a base of operations, somewhere to live, plan, and most importantly, train jihadis. He turns to Afghanistan. Here, bin Laden planned his acts of terror, focused on inflicting pain to Western infidels. "15 years after beginning my investigation of bin Laden, I'm back in Abbottabad, Pakistan, to investigate the end of the notorious terrorist's life.
In 1996, I first heard of bin Laden's name. The State Department released a very interesting white paper about him, describing him as a financier of Islamic extremism.
By the mid-1990s, the State Department has a robust file on bin Laden. Alarm bells began to ring about him in a paper titled Osama bin Laden, Who's Chasing Who? The paper called Afghanistan bin Laden's new home an ideal haven, and described bin Laden as a man emboldened by recent events. At this point, bin Laden has been in Afghanistan for a year after leaving Sudan. I made up my mind to investigate him in depth. 1997, after months of negotiations, we interviewed bin Laden in a mud hut near the Tora Bora Mountains. And for the first time, he declared war on America to a Western audience.
I thought, well, that's all super interesting, but how do you attack the United States from a mud hut in Afghanistan, controlled by the Taliban, who'd taken the country back to the Middle Ages?
1 year before our interview, Afghanistan fell into Taliban control. The new fundamentalist regime welcomed Al-Qaeda, a new partner to strike at the West. The Taliban gave terror groups like Al-Qaeda freedom to operate without restriction.
Assembling every jihadi group in the world is there in some shape or form.
Bin Laden has all he needs to carry out his threats against the West. He made efficient use of his willing hosts to form a base of operations, train his foot soldiers, and plan terrorist operations. Resulting in some of Al-Qaeda's most lethal attacks. Bin Laden and Al-Qaeda's path to striking the US has been decades in the making. bin Laden paid particular attention to the Hezbollah terrorist group. Its successful attacks provided a roadmap to terror. U.S. Marine Barracks, Beirut, 1983. A truck loaded with 12,000 pounds of explosives crashed through security checkpoints. The blast killed 241 members of the U.S. military.
There are no words to properly express our outrage, and I think the outrage of all Americans, at the despicable act, following as it does.
Despite President Reagan's vow to keep a presence in Lebanon, he pulled all troops out of Lebanon 4 months after the attack.
For hours afterwards. But it had to be a slow operation. The building was made of...
Bin Laden's attention turned towards a civil war in Africa a decade later. Somalia, 1993. 24 UN peacekeepers are killed by Somali militants. It's one of the worst losses of life in UN history. In response, US Special Forces launched a raid in the Somali capital, Mogadishu, to capture the warlord responsible. But instead, al-Qaeda-trained militia shot down a US helicopter in the Battle of Mogadishu. Black Hawk Down. Bin Laden uses the victory to further secure his influence and recruit fighters. Largely overlooked by the US government, bin Laden's confidence swells. He sees al-Qaeda-trained jihadis kill 18 Americans and face virtually no retaliation.
In 1993, President Clinton pulled American troops out of Somalia because of attacks during the Black Hawk Down incident where 18 American servicemen were killed. Bin Laden saw that as evidence for American weakness.
Nearly 5 years later, al-Qaeda executed another major terror operation against US interests. August 7th, 1998, 2 bombs detonated nearly simultaneously at the US embassies in Nairobi and Dar es Salaam.
It is the worst thing I've ever seen. When I was in the United States, there was the Oklahoma City bombing, and this reminds me of that.
Ayman al-Zawahiri and his terror group Egyptian Islamic Jihad joined al-Qaeda just months earlier and is suspected of contributing to the devastation.
They blew up 2 US embassies within 9 minutes of each other. It's hard to blow up an American embassy. It's really hard to blow up 2 almost simultaneously. That showed they had the ability to, carry out attacks thousands of miles from Afghanistan. They could do things that were complicated.
The bombings had bin Laden's fingerprints all over them. In November 1998, he is charged, along with 21 associates, with the bombings. Bin Laden and Zawahiri remain undeterred. 1983, Beirut. 1993, Black Hawk Down. 1998, embassy bombings. America strikes back. On August 20th, 1998, President Clinton ordered cruise missile strikes against sites in Afghanistan and Sudan.
Our target was terror. Our mission was clear: to strike at the network of radical groups affiliated with and funded by Osama bin Laden.
Dozens of cruise missiles are launched from 6 warships, all missing their target.
Ultimately, President Clinton decided to launch cruise missiles instead of send a raid force. That was unsuccessful. And then after the embassy bombings, a cruise missile response, I think at that point he did feel emboldened and thought, okay, I can get away with this.
Al-Qaeda is now willing to execute terror plans against American targets. Their next operation is the boldest to date. This time they attacked a US Navy warship. On October 12, 2000, the USS Cole is in port in Aden, Yemen for refueling. Two suicide bombers on a small boat packed with 500 pounds of explosives pulled alongside, detonating their payload. The blast ripped a 40-foot gash in the Cole. The FBI attributed planning and execution of the attack to 10 members of the Al-Qaeda network.
The small boat with 2 men in it was apparently not seen as a threat. And tonight we know that 5 American sailors were killed, a dozen are unaccounted for, and 36 were wounded.
The US retaliated with airstrikes that targeted 3 of the 10 planners. The USS Cole bombing is a deadly strike against the US military.
He was constantly trying to come up with plans to kill more Americans. That was kind of the primary goal that he had.
Beirut, Black Hawk Down, embassies, USS Cole. Weak American response to each. Bin Laden now has all the evidence he needs to take jihad to America.
We were awakened by a phone call, and I ran downstairs. But the second plane came in, we all knew this was an attack.
American citizens like Pastor Jimmy Jack mobilized immediately.
When the buildings fell was the biggest and the most painful realization. It was as though a family member passed away in front of our eyes. That was the moment that we knew we needed to do something to be a part of the rescue and recovery.
On September 11th, bin Laden struck at the soul of America, thinking the attack would terrorize and intimidate its citizens. Instead, what I saw was Americans coming together in solidarity. More than 20 years on, we still hear people's stories and see images from 9/11 that we've never seen before.
This is the ground zero where you could see Tower 1 and Tower 2, South Tower.
We finally made it to the entrance of what was called Ground Zero, which was gated off and fenced off.
Nothing but smoke and dust. That's what's left of the World Trade Centers. We're about 5 blocks away from the base of the towers. We continue to hear explosions, and everywhere there is dust, debris, papers.
As they pulled out the bodies, we would all stand in awe and salute.
Also at the scene is Pastor Jack's brother, Johnny.
He was working what they called the bucket brigade, but it was digging debris, shoveling, and looking for bodies. To which he found a lot.
At the Pentagon, bin Laden's second target was hit by Flight 77, killing all 64 on board and 125 people on the ground. And in Shanksville, Pennsylvania, all passengers and crew aboard the hijacked Flight 93 lost their lives heroically thwarting a likely attack on the U.S. Capitol. September 11 succeeded beyond bin Laden's and Zawahiri's expectations. It was the deadliest attack ever on U.S. soil. 500 more died than perished at Pearl Harbor.
Bin Laden never sort of seemed to have given a second thought to the idea, well, maybe 9/11 was a big mistake.
Every nation in every region now has a decision to make. Either you are with us or you are with the terrorists.
Bin Laden's personal journal reveals his thinking about the US reaction to come. What he didn't anticipate was the overwhelming American response. In a matter of weeks, US Special Forces are on the ground leading anti-Al-Qaeda Afghan fighters. Coordinating with ground attacks, a massive bombing campaign gets underway. Bin Laden is on the run into the mountainous Tora Bora region bordering Pakistan. Now the most wanted man on earth, Bin Laden's only chance of survival is disappearing from the outside world. The letters found in Osama bin Laden's compound detail his correspondence with the terrorist organization. In hiding, he still tries to retain control of Al-Qaeda. Meanwhile, Al-Qaeda has spread its tentacles to other regions. Affiliates in Kurdistan fight to enforce strict Islamic law. The CIA finds allies in the region. Kurdistan covers parts of 5 countries and has about 30 million inhabitants. The Peshmerga, an elite Kurdish fighting force, help defend their territory from foreign invaders, groups like Al-Qaeda's Kurdish battalion. In a bid to expand their territory, Al-Qaeda took on Kurdish forces defending their homeland.
قاعدة الدوري بشكينن يعني نيل بين ناو كردستان ونيل سنوري كردستان ببزين ياخذ سنور أو سنوراني كأنا ببزين بين الناواني أو جسم لصلاتي خوان أسفان لو شننا هامو هولي كانيا كبين دز بيرن بسر أملاكي كردستان.
The Kurds keep vigilant watch over their homeland.
من عميدم لهذه بيجمرجي كردستان.
At their borders, the Peshmerga used a variety of tactics to defeat would-be invading forces and fed intel to the CIA.
Every lead, every clue that was discovered was analyzed and manipulated and turned around and thought about again.
The Peshmerga guards at the Kalar checkpoint stopped a car trying to get into Iraq near the border with Iran. The traveler was suspicious.
أوشتاني كاللاي هابو بيجينيد وابزام هلا برأو بزيادة البيشمرقة يعني هستي كدو يعني ناس يواني شكلي غريب يعني طبعا.
Guards took the man into custody for questioning. He quickly reveals his identity, Hassan Gul, and reveals key details about bin Laden's courier network. Exactly what the CIA needed.
They wanted to pursue bin Laden through his courier network. We knew he was communicating, but we also knew he wasn't communicating electronically. So it had to be couriers.
Gul gave up information about another courier, one of bin Laden's most trusted, Abu Ahmed al-Kuwaiti.
زمان في خوش بك أو تيروستانا أو إرهابيانا لنا وشون طبعا دو خوش بين بوانا كمان و
Al-Kuwaiti took extensive measures to avoid detection, unaware that the CIA has discovered his role as a courier to bin Laden. Among his attempts to maintain anonymity, very short calls and removing the battery from his phone, making him difficult to track. For many years, the intelligence operation remained vigilant, patient, always listening. In 2010, US intelligence intercepted a seemingly ordinary call in Peshawar, Pakistan. The NSA and CIA tracked a call, determining the phone number belonged to al-Kuwaiti. Now the courier's location can be followed. The phone signal is tracked to a white Suzuki driving around the city. Finally, al-Kuwaiti led operatives to a quiet neighborhood in the town of Abbottabad, just 35 miles north of Islamabad, Pakistan's capital. After weeks of surveillance, agents' suspicions rise another notch as they watch the courier's van pull into a large compound.
Recently built, disproportionate in size from other homes in the neighborhood, incredibly high security. Now look, as you well know, people in Pakistan have high walls, particularly in this region, but they usually don't have high walls around their balconies. And it was those kinds of physical signatures that convinced the agency that they were really onto something.
A large house, out of place from the surrounding neighborhood. A custom-built fortress for a mass murderer. While in Abbottabad, producing my 2011 investigation of bin Laden, I was the only Western journalist permitted to inspect bin Laden's compound up close. I wanted a clear picture of how the compound was constructed to better understand bin Laden's life in hiding. So I went to the source, the architect who designed it.
Yeah, in the ground floor, and same requirement for the first floor.
The building's actually in reality 3 floors. Where is the 3rd floor?
The 3rd floor on site is unauthorized construction.
They illegally built a 3rd floor.
Yeah, they just constructed illegally.
Neighbors know how unusual the property is, and how unusual its occupants.
My name is Shabir Ahmed.
Yeah.
I am a businessman. I have land there in front of my house.
So it's right next door to the bin Laden
This is
compound?
just opposite the bin Laden compound.
And did you meet anybody who came in and out of the compound?
Khan from Peshawar. 3 times I knocked this door, nobody came out. This is very suspicious. He's doing the transportation business. They cannot have such house.
Yeah.
It's not possible. I'm doing business in Dubai.
Right.
So I have 3 houses, but small one, not big one.
Inside the house, life was not glamorous. The compound was unkept, had bare walls, 1 heating unit, no air conditioning. What it does have are means to survive while rarely leaving. Surveillance imagery showed the compound was largely self-sufficient.
They had a small kitchen garden. They had a few cows. They had some chickens.
Everything it needed for avoiding prying eyes of neighbors, or, for a time, the CIA. However, despite attempting to hide in plain sight, the extensive search by the agency zeroes in on the compound.
It was a combination of human sources, technical sources, and just good old-fashioned analysis. So as we looked at it, we said more and more, yeah, this could be the place he's at.
The NSA sent spy satellites and intelligence drones capturing images and trying to eavesdrop on the compound.
It was a black spot. They noticed that there were no phone lines running into it or connections to the outside world. And that just shouted at them, these people don't want to be found.
Satellite imagery shows a tall man who paced around a small private section of the garden, his identity concealed by screens above his head. The intelligence is stacking up. In February 2011, 6 months after the courier is first tracked to the compound in Abbottabad, CIA Director Leon Panetta met with the president.
The president asked, what is the percentage that Osama bin Laden's in that compound?
Senior CIA officials estimated 60%, but it's all circumstantial evidence. This is a top priority for the president. He asked for options to capture or kill bin Laden. On March 14th, the president is presented with 3 options.
The three that we know best right now were an option to strike the individual that was thought to be bin Laden with a drone, to drop a large number of bombs onto the compound in order to ensure its destruction, or to conduct a raid.
He needed positive identification. He needed to be sure that they had in fact killed Osama bin Laden.
The president gets varying information from his intelligence chiefs about whether it is bin Laden in the compound. Without definitive evidence, he made the bold decision to go. President Obama chose the Special Ops Raid. It's a risky decision, but the one most likely to deliver bin Laden dead or alive.
We do operations every single night, 10 or 15 of them. This is obviously the most significant one since 9/11.
Under the cover of a moonless night, aircraft described by President Obama as two Black Hawk helicopters that had been modified for stealth left Jalalabad airfield in Afghanistan.
They'll be flying nap of the earth in and out of valleys, 0 to 20 feet above the terrain, above a tree or above the ground to avoid detection.
The president's decision, made halfway around the world, is in motion. May 1st, 2011, 10:30 p.m. local time, Operation Neptune Spear is underway. Two Black Hawks carrying 23 SEALs arrived at the compound in Abbottabad, Pakistan. It's suspected to be the hiding place of Osama bin Laden. As one of the Black Hawks tries to hover over the compound's outer walls, the aviator loses control. The Black Hawk has descended into its own rotor wash, a hazardous aerodynamic phenomenon known as settling with power.
The aviator of the Black Hawk helicopter, he lost his tail rudder. He had no control over the aircraft.
Then had to go to Plan B, but these guys, they planned for Plan A, Plan B, and Plan C, and they were able to adapt immediately on the ground and conduct the operation.
They encountered additional challenges that were not expected, such as one of the doors on the outer compound wall was fake. It was, behind it was just the cement wall or the cinder block wall, and they detonated an explosive charge, blew the fake doorway.
At the compound, the SEALs broke into groups of 3. 3 SEALs headed in the direction of the guest house. They saw al-Kuwaiti running back to the house. He emerged firing a weapon. Returning fire, the SEALs shoot him dead. Another group of SEALs encountered the courier's brother and his wife in the doorway of the main building. The SEALs shot and killed them both. The SEALs entered the main building.
Then they make their way for the stairs, and the stairs have these barriers on them. So they start blowing their way through the barriers and making their way up the various landings.
On the second floor, the SEALs encountered bin Laden's son. The SEAL shot kills him. The first of the bin Laden family is killed. The SEALs continued up the stairs, carefully navigating the surrounding chaos. The SEALs reached the 3rd floor. They saw bin Laden at the end of the hallway. The lead SEAL shoots bin Laden.
Bin Laden ducks into a door. They run after him. They have to assume he's seen them, they've seen him, they think he's going for a gun.
High above the compound, a stealth drone beamed live video to a secure room back in Washington. But the drone can't see the events unfolding inside. The 3 Navy SEALs made their way along the hallway and into bin Laden's bedroom. Immediately, they encountered bin Laden's youngest wife, and one of his daughters. The women screamed, and his wife tried to shield bin Laden. The first SEAL, who feared they might be wearing suicide bomb vests, shot the wife in the leg, wraps them both in a bear hug, and shoves them aside. And with multiple shots, the most wanted terrorist was dead. The scene of bin Laden's bloody demise. Over the feed in the Situation Room, the voice of one of the SEALs. For God and country. Geronimo, Geronimo, Geronimo.
Each step in the plan had a letter of the alphabet, and G, Geronimo, meant they'd gotten bin Laden.
The local time in Pakistan was approximately 1 a.m. Bin Laden found and killed. SEALs searched for documents that might help uncover al-Qaeda operatives and future terrorist attacks. What they found surprises everyone in the operation. It was a treasure trove of information. Nearing the time limit for the operation, one of the SEALs requested extra time to collect as much intelligence as possible. The assault team was in the compound for about 20 minutes longer than anticipated, gathering as much of the material as they can. The Pakistani military was kept in the dark for fear of an intelligence leak. Alarmed by the presence of unknown intruders, they scrambled F-16 fighter jets. The Pakistani Air Force wasn't equipped with sophisticated night flying capacity. They scrambled jets, but it is useless. The delay is tracked by the watchful eyes of US surveillance, confirming the soldiers can complete their search.
Watching the Pakistani Air Force gave the Navy SEALs breathing room.
In the few remaining minutes, the SEALs grabbed as much evidence as they can. Inside the compound's courtyard, the Special Ops aviators rigged the crashed Black Hawk with explosives.
This aircraft in particular, as we know, was probably had the highest level of classified equipment and classified information surrounding it. So it was imperative that this aircraft be destroyed.
At the departure point, a medic extracted DNA samples from bin Laden's body for definitive identification. DNA samples are placed on a waiting Chinook, and bin Laden's body was loaded into the still operational Black Hawk. And as the SEALs readied themselves to leave the scene, they blow up the downed stealth Black Hawk. Roughly 40 minutes after the raid began, a fire illuminates the scene as the special operations team leaves the compound.
Those 40 minutes were the longest 40 minutes, I think, of any of our lives.
The real celebration didn't come until the helicopters were back across the border, which was actually another 30, 40 minutes. So we were definitely not celebrating while the operators were still on the objective.
Once the mission's helicopters re-enter Afghan airspace, relief and elation.
So it was a small celebration followed by a bigger celebration.
Good job. It's him. This was him.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm proud of it. You guys did a great job.
There was an incredible sense of accomplishment in that room. And there were hugs. And there were smiles, because we really felt like we had written the end to a very painful chapter in American history.
Osama bin Laden, subject of a decade-long worldwide manhunt, is dead. His body flew to the USS Carl Vinson for burial at sea. world's most powerful man announced the end of the world's most wanted terrorist. Details found in the materials from the compound were chilling. Bin Laden was obsessed with large-scale terror attacks.
From the trove, what they learned was that bin Laden never lost his fascination with planes, and he never lost his desire to cause another 9/11 style attack of that magnitude, that he thought that would finally drive the United States from all Muslim countries.
But in the end, it was his own words that gave America the advantage, providing insight into his plans and inner workings of the organization, all essential to U.S. intelligence in the fight against fundamentalist terrorism.
A number of al-Qaeda leaders were killed in CIA drone strikes. I think it's a direct result of what was in that tranche of material that the SEALs picked up.
Along with usable intelligence, the journal and hard drives showed that day-to-day life for bin Laden seemed to be less active al-Qaeda planning and more the self-imposed life of a stay-at-home husband. Bin Laden, self-proclaimed veteran of the struggle against the Soviets. Bin Laden, global financier of jihad. Bin Laden, old and gray, no longer supreme terrorist leader, killed in the bedroom of his suburban Abbottabad compound.
It wasn't a heroic ending, and he hadn't gone out in a blaze of jihadist glory.
The hunt for al-Qaeda doesn't stop here. Over a decade later, the US settled another score. On July 31st, 2022, al-Zawahiri is killed by a US drone strike in Kabul, Afghanistan.
My fellow Americans, on Saturday, at my direction, the United States successfully concluded an airstrike in Kabul, Afghanistan that killed the emir of al-Qaeda. He was deeply involved in the planning of 9/11, one of the most responsible for the attacks that murdered 2,977 people on American soil. For decades, he was the mastermind behind attacks against Americans, including the bombing of the USS Cole in 2000, which killed 17 American sailors and wounded dozens more. He played a key role in the bombing of the U.S. embassies in Kenya and Tanzania, killing 224 and wounding over 4,500 others. I authorized a precision strike that would remove him from the battlefield once and for all.